That's poor.
Listen, it's draft night. You dress up for the occasion, right? Dress for the job you want.
Not like that. But that's okay.
You don't like my vampire look?
Yeah, Count Von Berry.
It is what it is. It's fine. You know what? Look, I want to suck your blood.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour post-NFL Draft Love-Hate Edition. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher. Fellas, big-time weekend. We made it, and now we get to have a little fun.
Made it through.
Got all my blood. Still got all my blood.
Got all your blood. I tried to suck it out. You wouldn't let me. You're quicker than you look. I'll give that to you. Quicker than he looks, by the way. I am in a festive outfit because we are headed to the Kentucky Derby.
That's right.
We are galloping to the Kentucky Derby.
Yes, that's what we're saying.
That's a gallop.
We
That's
will be
what it is.
flying, but
I'm
apparently
on
you'll be
an
galloping.
imaginary horse and I'm galloping.
Okay, so you're not slaloming or whatever that word is? Your
No,
favorite
slaloming.
word?
That's slaloming is this. Galloping is this.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
For the love of God.
Yeah.
And
sorry,
here, this is
gallop.
here. You want something you'll recognize? Look, I'm riding a kangaroo. Look at me. Look at me. I'm Jay.
You're
I'm riding a
running it?
kangaroo to school.
Running it like it's
Hello,
a
mate.
Hyundai Tucson?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm holding onto the ears, and he's hopping.
Kangaroo Tucson?
You did the kangaroo
Okay.
song right there
It's
from.
good. It's good. I like it.
Is there a different way to ride a kangaroo? How did you do it when you were a kid?
No, that was exactly the way I did it
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah, no, it's
Thank you
actually
very much.
stunningly
Exactly.
accurate.
That's all I'm
Stunningly
saying.
accurate. Yeah, well
Yeah, I
done.
do my research.
Good job.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Bijan Robinson.
Let's get right into it.
Anyway, no, we're going to hang on.
Oh, we have more fun left.
No,
We have-
look at that, yeah.
Okay.
We're going to be at the Kentucky Derby, beautiful, historic Churchill Downs, this Thursday. Thank you very much. Yes, galloping.
Yep.
Galloping. Connor actually the actual size of a jockey, so this will help.
Jesus.
And so we're going to be there 5 p.m.
God,
Eastern,
slaughter
live
itself.
on Peacock. We'll talk about that later on the show. But anyway, I'm doing this because I am part of NBC's 149th Kentucky Derby coverage.
I'm excited to see this footage.
Yes. It's why I'm watching.
Yeah,
Like
well, you should.
I
Lots of
like
surprises in store.
horses, but
Surprise.
I'm really watching to see what you actually have to say. Yes. I don't think you know.
No, I got till Saturday to figure it out.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
All right.
I
Plenty
will
of
say
time.
this. I had a production call on Friday about it. They're using me more than, candidly, I would. I will just say this.
When I showed up Thursday
Yeah.
for the draft and you were walking around in a ridiculous outfit
Well,
with
in
people
the-
in
in the-
money suits following you.
Yeah.
I
People
knew
in money-
something had gone wrong.
Something had gone wrong
Terribly
or
wrong.
terribly right.
Yes.
It's there's really no in between. And the outfit that I was wearing on the draft, the tux with the cape, also figures into one of the things I'm doing for the draft.
Now, you see, you've ruined two things here, because now whenever I think of the NFL draft and the Kentucky Derby, I'm going to think of Matthew Berry dressed as Dracula.
Yes.
So they're both tainted
Horrifying.
forever.
Yeah, horrifying.
Have you ever been on a
Beautiful.
horse?
Huh?
Have you ever been on a horse?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was like a 10, like
Okay.
because
that would be the segment I would
right,
want.
Just yeah,
Like they put you on the horse and someone just slaps it and it just runs.
yeah, exactly.
Riveting television.
Yeah. Cut to me being wheeled out on a stretcher, the ambulance bringing me out, because they fall over, right? Yeah. Yeah, everyone thinks they're on Yellowstone until they get on the horse.
It
and
gets
then you
real.
realize
It gets real
It gets
very
real,
quickly.
very 1,000%.
All right.
1,000%.
And with that,
Yeah. Bijan
Love
Robinson.
Bijan Robinson. Love-hate running back time, and there is no better player to start with than Bijan Robinson. Not only the best running back in this draft, top 5 player in this draft, just the classic Arthur Smith had to have it selection. You look at Arthur Smith, I mean, when he was the offensive coordinator for Tennessee in 2019, 2020, they ran Derrick Henry into the ground, and why not? And that gives you a lot of hope for Bijan Robinson, who is an immensely talented 3-down player out of the backfield. So, Barry, I mean, a lot to love with this selection, this landing spot. Of course, most importantly, the player.
Yeah, I mean, first off, we should just sort of paraphrase that. Hey, love-hate is about players whose fantasy stock improved because of what their teams did during the NFL draft. Sometimes it's players drafted, sometimes it's players on their teams. Hate, of course, is the opposite. And Bijan Robinson lands in Atlanta, a team that led the NFL in running back rushing yards last year, had the second most running back carries with a 5th-round rookie and Cordero Patterson. And now they get Bijan Robinson. I think, you think about Arthur Smith as the offense coordinator in Tennessee when he had Derrick Henry, 718 touches in the 2 seasons that Smith was the OC for Tennessee. That's in the realm of possibility here. I'm not saying Bijan Robinson is Derrick Henry. I think he's more versatile. To your point, like we talked about this on draft night, you can put him in the slot, you can put him in the passing game, you can do a lot of different things, put him in motion. So I think Bijan Robinson is basically like a rich man's version of Cordero Patterson. I mean, they found some success the last 2 years with Patterson using his versatility in a bunch of different ways. And all due respect to Patterson, who I love, who I've always carried, the flag for, he ain't Bijan Robinson. I mean, Bijan Robinson is just
How many are?
Just right, exactly. I think he's an immediate top 5 fantasy running back this year.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Bijan is this is probably the best possible landing spot in terms of fantasy value. Like, this would be the one team you would actually pick above everyone else. I mean, there was rumors initially that he might go to Dallas, which would have been, frankly, a disaster from a fantasy perspective because it would have tanked both him and Tony Pollard. But the fact that he goes to Atlanta, and I know there's some concern about Tyler Algier. I don't think Tyler Algier is cutting into Bijan Robinson. I think it's just going to be the Derrick Henry show, but with Bijan.
Tyler Algier is insurance if you draft Bijan Robinson, but I think you could see some plays. They'll have some packages where Algier's in the backfield, and that maybe they both start in the backfield, and then Bijan Robinson moves out to the slot or something like that, or goes in motion. But if you draft Bijan Robinson, your concerns are not going to be Tyler Algier cutting into his, okay, fine. He doesn't get 28 touches a game. He gets 24. You're going to be just fine and very happy if you have Bijan Robinson on your fantasy team this year.
And how about this? The Falcons, it got even better on day 2. They took Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse. He's going to move from tackle to guard. I thought he was one of the best run blockers in the entire draft. They already have Chris Lindstrom, a top 5 guard in the NFL. So Bijan's going to a team that there's a really good run blocking offensive line in front of him. So much to love about Bijan. Let's close it on this. I know this is wildly early, but clearly first-round pick in redraft leagues.
Oh yeah,
and
but
where? How high can you take him?
I think if he was drafted within the top 6 or 7, you're not.
It's not crazy, right?
You're not crazy, right? I mean, honestly, I think he's probably top. My overall top 100 for the season is going to come out on Thursday of this week, and so I'm still noodling with it. But you've got a couple of wide receivers there, obviously Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase at the top, and then you've got some of the other running backs as well. You've got the McCaffreys, and we'll see about Eckler, there as well. But I mean, Bijan's right there. It's not a long list of running backs that you feel like you would rather have than him. So
is it just McCaffrey and Eckler? Jacobs? Maybe Jacobs?
I'd rather Saquon. Jacobs, Saquon, he's in that mix.
Yeah.
He's in that Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs mix.
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, they're all sort of right there, and so my guess is that again, I have to still crunch a few numbers, but there's a very good chance that it's McCaffrey and Eckler, the only 2 running backs I have ranked higher than him.
Yep.
Next up on the love list, Tony Pollard. As Dallas, the only running back they added was Deuce Vaughn, and that was in the 6th round, and far from a workhorse as Deuce Vaughn. But sticking with Pollard here, I mean, this has to help his rankings just because it's all designed to be the Tony Pollard show.
He's had 13 career games where he's gotten at least 15 touches, right? He averaged 19.6 fantasy points per game in those 13 career games where he's gotten 15 or more touches, which, again, given the fact that Ezekiel Elliott's no longer on this team, there's talk that they might bring him back. But at the moment, to your point, the Cowboys were rumored to be on the Bijan Robinson sweepstakes. They didn't add really anyone other than Deuce Vaughn and in the 6th round, which means Tony Pollard's got this job to himself, and he should be getting at least 15 touches per game. And if career averages mean anything, 19.6 fantasy points per game last year, guys, would have been running back 3. The list we just mentioned of McCaffrey, Eckler, Jacobs, Barkley, and Bijan Robinson, Tony Pollard's right in that mix as well.
Yep.
He's a clear-cut top 10 fantasy running back this season.
Yeah, and also just with how dynamic he is in the passing game too. If he just gets 15 carries per game, that could make him the best running back in football from a fantasy perspective.
15 carries and 3 or 4 receptions. Mike McCarthy said this offseason, he's going to be calling the plays this year. Kellen Moore now in Los Angeles with the Chargers. Mike McCarthy said he wants to run more, which is a little nutty given that you're paying Dak Prescott what you're paying him. But whatever, Mike McCarthy. The fact of the matter is Pollard should be used early and often. Again, at the moment, we'll see if Zeke comes back. But at the moment, the only real competition for touches back there feels like Deuce Vaughn, who they drafted in the 6th round. And Deuce Vaughn, I feel like, was a better draft day story than necessarily a threat to Tony Pollard playing time.
He absolutely was. I mean, 5'5", 179 pounds. He is going to sprinkle him in as a pass-catching back. And while that was great news for Tony Pollard's usage, it was even better news for the Vaughn family. Deuce's dad, Chris, a scout with the Cowboys, and got to make that decision for him to go to Dallas.
Hey, buddy. How's it going?
Hey, it's going good. This is Dad. My phone wasn't working. Look at here, man. You want to come to work with me next week?
I wouldn't mind that.
I'm so excited. There's just something magical about this moment that may be bigger than we even realize here talking to you on the phone. But you is now a Dallas Cowboy. Your daddy just handed the card in.
Hey, Deuce, Mike McCarthy, congratulations.
What's up, Coach? I appreciate it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been doing this a long time. This is so special for you and your father and your family. And if you could make sure you drive, so make sure your dad's on time for work, we'd appreciate it.
An awesome moment for the Vaughn family
Right.
and for the Dallas Cowboys as a whole.
Meanwhile, Mike McCarthy just a stray bullet into apparently Deuce Vaughn like a little tardy
Yeah.
at work. Like, what's going on? Like, Deuce
Greatest
Vaughn's
moment
dad.
for the Vaughn family of their entire lives.
Yeah,
Mike
but
McCarthy
Mike
goes,
McCarthy still has
it's
to-
Mike McCarthy's time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy still got a,
You guys have that in common. Like when things are going really well, how about a little joke in there somewhere?
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of, right, exactly.
Also a stray bullet at Mike McCarthy there from Matthew Berry. Just love taking shots at
I
Mike
love
McCarthy.
taking shots at Mike McCarthy. I am no fan of Mike McCarthy. There, I'll just say it. I've hidden it well, I think, for a couple of years. # free Aaron Jones. I did start that. That's when it started. That's when I decided I truly did not like Mike McCarthy as a head coach. I've never met him as a person. He might be a lovely human being, but as a head professional football coach, I am not a fan.
Mike McCarthy, Diamond Club member of the hate list, but back to the love list. Ramondre Stevenson.
No one has done less with more talent than Mike McCarthy in the NFL.
Ramondre Stevenson.
Get Aaron Rodgers. I mean, for a long time.
Yeah.
He did.
He made the Super Bowl once.
Yep.
With the most talented quarterback ever.
With the most talented quarterback ever. With one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks to ever play the sport.
Yep.
Yeah. Once.
15-1, lost to the Giants. Eli. Yeah. Hakeem Nicks. Hail Mary. Yeah. Didn't work out for Mike
McCarthy roast. Good Lord. Ramondre Stevenson makes the love list.
We're happy for the Vaughn family.
Yes.
But, what a great moment for the Vaughn
Great
family.
moment for the Vaughn family. Spoiled by Mike McCarthy.
Spoiled by Mike McCarthy.
And they won't use Deuce Vaughn the right way.
As everything always is. But the theme of established running backs that have sort of the backfield of themselves, and you go through the draft hoping like, oh, please don't take anyone that's going to be real competition for him. The Cowboys did not add anyone as of this moment that is real competition from Tony Pollard and Connor. Neither did the Patriots.
Which is shocking because they love to take day 3 running backs. They took 2 last year, but Jay, this year they said, no, we're good. Ramondre Stevenson, it is your time. They did not add a running back at all throughout this draft.
It's always been weird, Belichick's infatuation with adding running backs early. Remember Sony Michel? Would he go in the first round?
Oh, he certainly did.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense at the time.
How about
Didn't
Lawrence
really work out.
Maroney?
Lawrence Maroney, the great Lawrence Maroney. Yeah, with Ramondre, the thing is, and we've talked about this before, but he was banged up for most of last year, where he's always on the injury report, didn't look the same, and obviously, he had workload issues too, but, he's a guy who, I wouldn't be surprised if he led the league in rushing. He has that kind of upside, so Ramondre, he'll be a top 10 running back drafted off the board, I would think, next season.
What was exciting for me last year is that he had 17% target share, right? 3rd highest among running backs, and so we'll see. There's rumors about Mac Jones maybe moving on, but at the moment, it's either going to be Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi under center for the Patriots, and they don't mind checking down. And so Ramondre Stevenson not only has the between the tackles role that him and Damian Harris split last year, because Harris, of course, is in Buffalo, but he's got the quote-unquote James White role.
Yep.
He's going to have the pass-catching role as well. It is Ramondre Stevenson.
Again, part 2.
S-E-N.
Yeah,
very excited for him. Easy top 12 running back this year for Ramondre Stevenson.
Another one here, James Conner. Arizona goes out and gets one of the best offensive linemen in the draft in the first round in Paris Johnson. But you look at this depth chart, guys, it's James Conner, and then it's Corey Clement, Keontae Ingram. They didn't draft a running back. It's all there for James Conner.
It is. Again, there's going to be, there's a couple of veterans that are still out there. Just before we went to air, the Bills signed Latavius Murray. Ezekiel Elliott is the biggest name that's still out there, but there's guys that are still out there. So we'll see. Zeke's going to land somewhere, and that's going to hurt the fantasy value of whoever he gets. But at the moment, to your point, it's only Corey Clement and Keontae Ingram. They like Ingram, and I thought Ingram had some nice moments last year, but James Conner is their workhorse. Back-to-back seasons with over 1,000 total yards and 8 touchdowns. He's one of only 7 running backs that can say that. He's averaged over 15 fantasy points per game each of the last 2 years. And for all the concerns about the injury history with James Conner, this is a guy who's played at least 90% of the snaps 5 of the last 7 games. He battled through injuries each of the last 2 years. He always misses a little bit of time, but I feel like he's kind of shaken the really injury-prone bug. And this is what's nice about Conner is the pass-catching ability. So this team's going to be bad.
Really bad.
The Cardinals are going to be bad. The Cardinals are going to be in the hunt for the number 1 overall pick next year, especially, by the way, if they decide to take their time and letting Kyler Murray come back.
Which they will, surely.
Yes.
Right, like they're just like, it ain't our year, right?
It's a new regime and a new coach. They have no
it's
rush.
our year, no pressure. You know what, Kyler, take your time.
Yep.
And so as a result, but what that means is, like, because Connor's a nice pass catcher, he's not somebody that has to come off in third down when they're trailing, when they're down big. So James Conner, I think, is a top 20 fantasy running back and somebody that when you go into drafts, no one will be excited when you draft him, but all he's going to do is produce for you.
Yep, 58 targets last year. I think that was the big thing. And also showing that, he could produce on a bad team, which the Cardinals were last year and probably will be again this year. I mean, he had the awesome year 2 years ago when they were a playoff team and in the mix for the 1 seed, and he had 15 touchdowns, but he was still able to go over 1,000 yards and still get a decent number of touchdowns on a mediocre team.
He is one of the best finishers around the goal line in the NFL, and so we expect that role to continue as well.
Staying in the NFC, the Bucs also did not draft a running back, much like Arizona didn't. Rachaad White right now, Barry, I know he's hanging around your top 25 running backs in your projected rankings. I mean, this depth chart, guys, you have Rachaad White, Chase Edmonds, Keyshawn Vaughn. We know they let Leonard Fournette go this offseason. Another group that there's just not much there.
The comments coming out of Tampa Bay in the offseason have been like, we think he can be a stud. That's their words, that he can be, a true 3-down back. We saw moments of it last year. I think he can take the next step. That's what's exciting is that this is somebody that coming out of college wasn't profiled as a quote 3rd-down back, right? I mean, but like he sort of had to become that with Leonard Fournette last year. So we and Tom Brady trusted him in pass pro. Now, whether it's Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask under center, don't be surprised if they're dumping it off a lot. So because the pass catching role of White, and we know he can go between the tackles, this is, again, it's going to be a bad team, but it's not a division that scares you, and the workload, especially the passing game usage, should elevate him. Again, to your point, he's somewhere in that 20 to 25 range.
Yep. I think they're the weirdest team in the league. The
Right.
Bucs don't really understand what's going on. Like, they, in theory, should be rebuilding without Brady, but, there's still Godwin and Evans, and the offensive line is okay. The defense should be pretty good. Baker Mayfield's just randomly there and the starting quarterback. I don't really understand this team at all, but certainly they've got some upside. Like, they could win that division. Why not?
It's a veteran roster with no clear-cut answer at quarterback.
But by the way, if there's no clear-cut answer at quarterback, you know what you do? You hand it off.
Yep.
You go run heavy. They have a defensive-minded head coach. We'll see what he may just say, like, listen, we don't have TB12 back there anymore. Like, you're handing it off. I'm going to try to win every game 15-14. You know what I mean?
That's Todd Bowles' way.
No, exactly.
Yes.
No, seriously. Todd Bowles just be
Yes.
like 17-14. That's my ideal win and I want to run the ball 30 times. And anyway, Rachaad White is somebody that comes out of the draft as a love because Tampa Bay was a team that was rumored to maybe look to add running back depth, and they didn't.
Back to the rookies here. Jahmyr Gibbs, a surprise top 15 pick. And listen, I mean, for the Lions here, it was out with DeAndre Swift immediately, in with Jahmyr Gibbs. Explosive big play threat, both as an outside runner and as a pass catcher. 11 of the last 12 running backs to be drafted in the first round saw 200-plus touches during their rookie season. So Jahmyr Gibbs, I know it's kind of a crowded backfield, but when you value him that way, it doesn't matter.
No. Here's the thing. At the moment of draft day, we're like, what? What are you doing? But now,
exactly what I did.
Now that DeAndre Swift is no longer there, we'll talk about that in a second. But our immediate reaction was, when we were doing our draft reaction, was, man,
what are they doing?
Just when you thought the Detroit Lions couldn't hate DeAndre Swift anymore, they truly, with a fiery passion, with a Jay Croucher-like passion, hate Jahmyr Gibbs. And hate DeAndre Swift. They love Jahmyr Gibbs. They hate DeAndre Swift, much in the way that Jay Croucher hates you by spoiling all the movies. And what I would tell you, and all of us, by the way, just so you know, all of us. He hates all of us.
I really do.
Right,
Yeah.
especially me and Connor. But what I will tell you here is that I love this landing spot with Jahmyr Gibbs. Now that DeAndre Swift is on the Eagles, and we'll talk about that in a second, he goes to a team that has a great offensive line, has a really creative play caller in Ben Johnson, is looking for offense, especially with Jamison Williams suspended for 6 games, TJ Hawkinson down in Minnesota. Other than Amon-Ra and St. Brown, they don't have an established playmaker. Now, David Montgomery is on the roster, but I got news for you. David Montgomery isn't good. David Montgomery is just there. David Montgomery is just a guy who shows up.
Yeah.
He's fine. You know what I mean? But, he just shows up. Gibbs has a chance to be special. Remember, DeAndre Swift, for all the hatred of DeAndre Swift in Detroit. The fact is, this is a guy who saw at least 70 targets each of the last 2 years. Each of the 3 seasons he's in Detroit, DeAndre Swift finished as a top 15 fantasy running back on a points per game basis. Again, he missed time. They didn't like him. They wouldn't give him double-digit touches, and yet he still found a way to being a top 15 fantasy running back. Now you get Jahmyr Gibbs behind that offensive line in that offense with a team that has invested serious draft capital into him. Like, my guess is that when early drafts happen, Montgomery will go ahead of Gibbs because people will assume Montgomery's getting the Jamal Williams role and the more touchdown. But I think there's, much like last year we kept saying, like, guys, give me Ramondre Stevenson over Damian Harris. Give me Jahmyr Gibbs over David Montgomery. I'm calling it right now. Give me Jahmyr Gibbs over David Montgomery.
Yeah, first of all, brutal attack on David Montgomery being talked about like a guy who's just like in the HR
street
system.
Free agent.
Yeah, he's just in Gusto, and that's it.
By the way, he is just a guy.
Yeah.
He's one of the least efficient running backs in the NFL.
Yeah, he's on the computer.
Connor Rogers.
I mean, listen, I'm all on the Gibbs train for this one.
Yeah,
but
no,
I do worry that Campbell looks at Montgomery and goes between the tackles, goal line touches. Feed him.
He's like, David Montgomery is, if we were in baseball, he's an innings eater. That's what he is.
Yeah.
He's like
long relief.
He's Jeff Suppan.
Yes, exactly.
That's an incredible call.
Yes.
Oh,
that's
God.
Right. Tell me I'm wrong.
Do you reckon I'm the only Australian who's made reference to Jeff Suppan today in the state of Connecticut?
Yeah, probably in the United States.
Yeah, we just got confirmation.
But Con, I mean, like, are you a Montgomery guy?
No, not anymore. This is my take on it. I think Gibbs can be their Kamara. And if that's the case, that's not, like, the role and the usage is all there for Gibbs to be the Lions version of Kamara. And if that's the case, then I don't care about David Montgomery in this offense.
I think the thing is, too, is it's a kind of corollary to following the money. Like, you have to follow the organizational incentives. And the fact that they reached for Gibbs so badly, like he was a coin flip to go in the first round, and they took him as early as they did. The fact that they spent that much capital on him, like, they have to play him. They have to give him the chance to fail.
Right. They spent that much capital on him when they had DeAndre Swift on the roster.
Yes.
That's my point. Like, again, like, now it's all cleared out and everything like that, and they didn't get much for Swift. They got like a 5 and a 7, I think.
I think it's a future long-term 4 or a 5.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's what it
down the road.
They got a 7 back, and they got, like, it's not much. It's
no,
like a 4 and a 5 or something like that. Like,
it was definitely waving the white flag that we are done with this guy.
Did you see the reaction as well from Dan Campbell and the team when they drafted Gibbs? It was like they drafted present-day Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, they won the draft as the reaction. Yes.
Reach for a guy 20 sorts too early.
Anyway, Gibbs over Montgomery, and he's a love for me.
A couple more running backs here. Devon A-Chain from your Texas A&M squad, of course. Miami loves speed, and they found it in the draft with A-Chain. Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, Isaiah Pacheco. The Chiefs not really that active. I mean, McKinnon's still out there, so we'll see.
So I think they re-signed McKinnon, but right now it's really Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and they've sort of made they've made how they feel about CEH pretty clear. Sanders and Hubbard is the same as we've talked about with Pollard or Connor. Just the Panthers didn't add anybody.
Yep.
And so that's a team that's likely going to run a lot to try to take some pressure off of Bryce Young. And the Devon A-Chain, just absolutely love the player, love the speed. He'll be third on the depth chart behind Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr., but both guys injury prone. They're hurt all the time. Mike McDaniel went in to get him. A-Chain is a great fit for the kind of offense McDaniel runs. Love Devon A-Chain.
All right, time to get into the hate list here. A couple running backs that things did not go their way through the NFL draft, and this was a little bit of a surprise for us guys. The Seattle Seahawks drafted Zach Charbonnet on day 2 of the draft. We obviously love Kenneth Walker. Charbonnet was my RB3 in this draft.
Yeah.
For Seattle, if you're a Seattle fan, this is awesome. Now you have 2 great running backs. If you like these guys in fantasy, especially Kenneth Walker, whether he's on your dynasty roster or a keeper, or you just wanted to draft him early, this is undoubtedly going to significantly eat into his workload.
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw the big plays for Walker. We saw the explosive plays. We saw the wow plays, right? But the other thing is like, here's a guy that played on less than 30, I'm talking about Walker now. He played on less than 30% on third downs last year. They weren't really using him as a pass catcher. He had 33 carries where he was tackled for a loss. That's third most among all running backs. This is a guy who didn't play for the first 5 weeks of the season, basically. He had 7 games last year where he averaged under 4 yards per carry. A lot of the yards per carry stuff was kind of, buoyed, I guess, however you want to say it, but propped up by these long runs that sort of skewed that. And so, he wasn't super efficient. Again, he also got a little bit banged up. It was his rookie year. I'm still a big Ken Walker fan, but I could see Seattle sitting here saying, like, hey, we like him, but we're not 100% sure. And oh, by the way, whether it was Rashad Penny, whether it was Chris Carson, whether it was even Ken Walker a little bit last year in terms of being banged up, they've dealt with running back injuries quite a bit, and you know how much Pete Carroll likes to run the ball, so depth makes sense. Charbonnet's a really talented player. You can't fault Seattle for saying, like, hey, we're going to add to this offense. I think if you are a dynasty manager of Geno Smith, you're thrilled with what the Seahawks did. I think if you're a Seahawks fan, you should be thrilled. But I think if you're a dynasty manager of Ken Walker, like, I don't know, this guy is, you're like, man, come on.
Ken Walker's a weird one because the advanced numbers don't really love him because he did have that dependence on where he's just breaking 60-yard runs for fun.
Right.
Then he scored 1 touchdown in his last 6 games of the season as well, so that dried up. He's constantly injured. He started the season injured. He ended the season kind of injured. He's playing through an ankle. But, I don't know, just watching him, like he runs so angry. He was incredible at the end of the season. He won them that game against the Rams to basically get them into the playoffs. Like the talent is there, but now you just worry. Also with the passing game, they've improved their passing game too, and Geno's a legit quarterback. So it just feels like there's just too many guys. Like I think everyone on Seattle lost.
Right, and by the way, and Jay, you and I talked, just to going back to Walker for a second, you and I and Michael Smith talked about Walker on Fantasy Football pregame, like on week 4 or something like that. While Penny was still the starter, he was still healthy in the starter, we were just talking about sort of sneaky pickups, like grab a guy and stash him. And I mentioned Ken Walker and said that, like, I had heard from a source in Seattle that told me, they're like, this kid can be LaDainian Tomlinson. Yeah. Like, that's who he reminds us of. Like, again, not saying he's going to be one of the greatest running backs of all time, but just that's how high they were internally on him. So it's a little, that was a year ago. So it's certainly grabbing Charbonnet was surprising, but in another situation, he'd be ranked higher. But Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker, honestly, the entire Seattle offense is a hate because just more talented players means less of the ball to go around.
Yep.
All right, moving over to the Saints. Alvin Kamara makes the list here. The Saints signed Jamal Williams. We know Jamal Williams just feasts at the goal line. Yep. That's what he does. And then they drafted Kendre Miller in the 3rd round, a bigger running back that can run in between the tackles.
Yeah, talk about Miller a little bit here.
Miller's a good player. 3rd round surprised me a little bit. He's a bigger back. He's got good contact balance. He's got good vision. Nothing splashy, nothing flashy. He's not going to be this home run hitting kind of guy. And taking him in the 3rd round after signing Jamal Williams signals 2 things to me. 1, they're bracing for a Kamara suspension. Duh, everybody knows that. But 2, when you look at this team, it feels like those guys are going to get the bulk of the actual carries, the running. And maybe Kamara's just being very pigeonholed into even more of a pass-catching role than we've ever seen. So this pick really, really surprised me with the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, unless they just sort of think, you know what, hey, we're just going to go. I mean, by the way, I mean, they're remaking this offense, right, with Derek Carr. I mean, you know, and so maybe they're just like, you know what, we want to set up play action for Carr to Olave, so we want guys that can go between the tackles, and we're not going to try to do this stuff. I mean, remember this about Kamara. In addition to the looming suspension, he's also been hurt significantly last couple of years. Last year, a target share of 18%. That was a career low. They're not even using him in the passing game. They still have Taysom Hill there. You know,
it's going to be a thing. He's going to be a thing.
It's going to be an annoying thing as well. It's just, and the last thing I'll say here is that they didn't use him this way in Detroit. But if you think back to Jamal Williams in Green Bay, he's a really good pass-catching running back. Yep. They used Swift in that role in Detroit, but it's not a skill that Jamal Williams has forgotten. So there's a scenario where Miller is the between the tackles guy, and they use Williams.
I think so.
And certainly in pass pro because he's more of a veteran. You know, Carl. I don't know. They just may be done with Alvin Kamara. Like
that's
everything.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think this is the beginning of the end for Kamara in New Orleans.
And I think it's not just about like the usage and the potential suspension. He just hasn't been good for 2 years.
Yeah.
Like I mean,
Always
maybe that's
hurt.
been banged up, but he just hasn't. Like he scored 4 touchdowns total last year. He had more than that on Christmas against the Vikings
Yes,
2
he
years
did.
ago alone. So he just hasn't been the same guy. Hasn't been as explosive. The receiving has just dried up. I mean, he hasn't topped 490 receiving yards the past 2 seasons, where he's up around 800 in his prime. So just doesn't seem like the same guy, and just doesn't look like he's going to be there.
And Kamara, So anyway, Kamara was already going to be on the hate list because of the suspension, because of all those things. But then you add Miller with 3rd round draft capital, a day 2 pick. You sort of think like, yeah, this is not great. You know.
To your point about
Makes
Jamal
the hate
Williams, I mean, he's one of the best pass-protecting backs in the NFL, and that is vital for Derek Carr. You have to protect Derek Carr for him to have success, and I think Carr is going to pound the table.
There's a lot of things you have to do for Derek Carr for him to have success. But yes, certainly
Protection.
Protection is a big one of them. Yeah.
All right, looking at the Eagles' backfield, what a group this has become, guys. DeAndre Swift thrown into the mix, as we hinted at earlier. Rashad Penny on that low-flyer deal. And Kenneth Gainwell, who they really, really like and had moments last season, especially in the playoffs. The Eagles' three-headed monster is going to be pretty difficult to figure out.
Also, Jalen Hurts.
And Jalen Hurts runs.
Right, and honestly, like, the truth is probably none of them get the ball at the goal line. You've also got Boston Scott,
Of course. For the Giants games. That's where Boston Scott comes out. Yeah,
1,000%.
They unleash him.
The concern on DeAndre, like, all these guys, you're probably going to be stuck with one of them at the end of your draft, but ideally, all of them make my hate list because, to your point, right? So, I mean, they just don't throw to the running back. No team in the NFL had a lower running back target share last year than the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's a real concern for Swift because that's where he basically made his fantasy bones, if you will, is as a pass catcher in Detroit. Obviously, you have the injury concerns with Swift and Penny. If anything were to happen to one of them, then certainly you'd see an uptick in value for the other one that's still healthy. But the fact is that over the last 2 seasons, Jalen Hurts has 23 rushing touchdowns. That is tied for the second most, I should say, among all players in the NFL. Not running backs, all players in the NFL, tied for second most. So Hurts is always a threat to take it. In terms of passing game usage, you've got Smith, you've got A.J. Brown, you've got Dallas Goedert. They don't throw to the running backs, really. So now you've got Penny, Swift, Gainwell, maybe Scott. Listen, and they're all home run hitters in their own way, especially, Swift and Penny. So behind that offensive line, you can certainly see them having like a 6 for 90, 1 touchdown game. But it's going to be hard to predict when those guys are going to burst out for a big run. If I have to pick an Eagles running back, give me DeAndre Swift over Penny and Gainwell, but all of them make the hate list. All of them lost value by this backfield becoming as crowded as it did.
Yeah, in one of the first 2 weeks this coming season, one of these guys, Swift or Penny, is going to go off for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, and you trade him immediately. You trade him the next day because it's just not going to last. I mean, just Hurts at the goal line, just pillages so many of those touchdowns that it's just not going to be valued. It's going to be
they're going to want, listen, even though Shane Steichen is in Indianapolis, they're going to keep the same offensive system. They're going to, Sirianni was a multiple running back guy in Indianapolis. He's been a multiple running back guy in Philadelphia to date. I think he will continue to be. So certainly Swift, Penny, Gainwell, like I'm annoyed as a Commanders fan because the Eagles are going to be really good next year and really hard to defend, but they're also going to be really hard to predict for fantasy.
Our last running back on the list, we gave a lot of love to Bijan Robinson for obvious reasons, but with that comes a little bit of disappointment now for the future of Tyler Algier here, Jay.
Yeah, which is a shame because Tyler Algier had quietly an awesome
great
season.
Find.
Yeah,
great fifth-round find.
And now he's going to be a fantastic backup running back. And I don't think that he's someone that you're going to be drafting expecting to start him unless Bijan goes down. I don't think it's going to be a situation where it's a rotation like Bijan Robinson is not Caleb Huntley. Like Algier is going to be marginalized, and I expect he's someone that you carry as insurance if Bijan goes down, and that's about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just want to take this moment to talk about Tyler Algier for this reason. And so I wrote a love-hate column for NBCSportsEdge.com, rotoworld.com. It's up right now on the site. It's free. Go check it out. But one of the points that I made is like, again, value changes all the time. Think about a year ago from the Atlanta Falcons, and we were all excited. Wow, Drake London, 8th pick overall, going to Atlanta, massive target share incoming for Drake London. We love the player, we love the opportunity, and no one was talking about their 5th-round pick, Tyler Algier.
Yep.
Drake London, obviously a real disappointment for fantasy. They just never threw the ball, and Tyler Algier was a 1,000-yard rusher. So my point is that we can sit here and talk all we want about draft capital and opportunity, but ultimately, just remember, at some point, coaches take over, and not always rational coaching.
Absolutely.
Before we get to the pass catchers, the first Saturday in May, no other day can compete the atmosphere, excitement, and glamour of Churchill Downs and the 149th Kentucky Derby. Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC, and of course, streaming on Peacock. And of course, we'll be doing a show there Thursday.
Yeah.
How about that? And you'll
horse
be
is
there.
a horse, of course. I will be there.
We still don't know
I've got
why.
my outfit. Yeah, no, it's exciting. But I got my outfit. The wife's coming. Told her to buy a big hat.
Ah.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. I'm very excited.
All right.
And we will tune in for our show. Like we're gonna
have fun.
We're gonna be really fun. We're literally
It's a big event.
So we're on Thursday. We're doing it live from Churchill Downs at 5 p.m. Eastern on Peacock, and they have local races there. So there's gonna be horses behind us. Like we're gonna be at the actual NBC set, like where Mike Tirico is gonna be broadcasting on Saturday all day. Sorry, Mike. And apologies. You know, just someone sweep off the peanut, shells or whatever. Because anyway, before Mike gets there, please. The chicken finger crumbs. If they could do that for me. But yeah, I'm excited. It's been great. So Thursday, tune in for that.
Be an added element, making points about Tyler Lockett while there are horses galloping loudly behind us. Be fantastic. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Moving over to the pass catchers here, starting with the love list. Jordan Addison, taken, of course, after Jackson Smith and Jigba. But guys, when he was drafted, there was excitement on this desk of great landing spot, great player. He was my wide receiver too, right behind JSN. Gets to play in an offense with Justin Jefferson. We know Kirk Cousins gets the ball out. You don't have to worry about any of that. And really, Barry, Jordan Addison walks into a situation that he's a tailored number 2 wide receiver from day one of camp.
Adam Thielen ran the second most routes of any wide receiver in the NFL last year. He had 107 targets. So there's 107 targets that are now in Carolina, that have left. They didn't really replace. They didn't have any big free agent signings. They'll have T.J. Hawkinson for a full year, so that number's a little bit skewed because obviously he'll be a bigger part of the offense. But still, if you're like, well, they got Hawkinson there, and obviously Jefferson's going to command a lot. K.J. Osborne, as their number 3 receiver last year, got 90 targets. Yep. And so now it's Addison or K.J. Osborne. Kevin O'Connell likes to throw. This is going to be a downfield passing offense. It's going to be a fantasy-friendly offense. So to me, Jordan Addison should be the number 1 rookie taken this year in redraft at wide receiver. You're taking Bijan first, obviously, but I'm just saying among the wide receivers, to me, Jordan Addison is the number 1 rookie in redraft this year. And a special player, Connor.
A special player. I mean, somebody that's played inside and outside. He won the Bilikinoff 2 years ago at Pitt, goes to USC. He's played with NFL quarterbacks already. Kenny Pickett, of course, we're going to see Caleb drafted probably number 1 overall in a year. I mean, he's somebody that can really do it all. And the thing with Addison is pro-ready. Full route tree, great hands. There's just no worry here. And you brought up O'Connell, a guy that lives in 11 personnel. Even if they want Osborne on the field a little bit more, that means Addison's on the field automatically because they roll out 3 wide receivers time after time. So, Jay, I mean, this is just an exciting rookie wide receiver that it's like not just dynasty, it's not just long-term. It's no, this guy matters now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the analysis should center around like what you think of KJ Osborne because people are kind of sliding him in to be the Thielen replacement in the number 2. Like KJ Osborne,
I think that's wrong. Yeah,
he had a sick game against the Colts when the Colts were up 33-0 and the Vikings just throwing. He had 157 yards and everything. But outside of that, he didn't do much last season, KJ Osborne. So I think that number 2 receiver role in Minnesota is totally up for grabs, and there's no reason why Addison can't grab it.
Another rookie wide receiver on the love list, Barry. Quentin Johnston goes in the first round to the Chargers, who are all over this wide receiver class. Since entering the NFL, Justin Herbert ranks top 5 in completions and attempts on passes of 15-plus air yards. Quentin Johnston, big body target. He likes to get working down the field.
And that's the point, right? We talked to a friend of the podcast, Austin Eckler, on this show last year. We're like, yo, you got Justin Herbert who's got a cannon for an arm, and he's so good down the field. Why does he keep dumping it off to you? And Austin Eckler wasn't paraphrasing, but basically because we don't have a deep threat. We talked about the fact that Jalen Guyton going down in the preseason was a really under-the-radar injury, not because Jalen Guyton was going to be a big fantasy part of, a big piece in fantasy football, but because he stretched the field for them. And so now they get that in Quentin Johnston. Remember, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams combined to miss 11 games last year. They both are injury prone. They're both getting up there in years. And so great landing spot for Quentin Johnston, who I think immediately becomes the number 3. I think he slides in above Josh Palmer, if not immediately, very soon, shortly after. And then just given the injury history of Allen and Williams, I think you could see Johnson producing sooner rather than later. And dynasty-wise, just a great landing spot to get to be in LA with the Chargers with Justin Herbert for a long time.
Yeah, I think the Chargers are being a little bit slept on overall, at least on offense, because they were so banged up. Because Herbert had an array of maladies last season, didn't miss time, but was just kind of knocked around and was dealing with problems. And Mike Williams goes down, Allen goes down. They missed Rashawn Slater for basically the whole year. He comes back. That offensive line, which has been. The offensive line of the Chargers has been a weakness for, it feels like, 15 years. Phil Rivers never had a good line. Now they have a good line. Now they have Justin Herbert and his cannon arm, and this is going to be a really explosive offense that's going to be playing in shootouts. And so Johnston, if he's good enough, which we think he is, then he can be valuable from day one.
And by the way, I'll just say, Kellen Moore from the Cowboys. I'm a Kellen Moore fan. I feel like he was held back by
your man, Mike
by
McCarthy.
Jerry and Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
I do. I genuinely do. So I think Kellen Moore is a pretty good play caller. So I'm excited. I'm excited about this Chargers offense.
A couple other mentions here from the rookie class. Of course, Jonathan Mingo goes to a situation with the Panthers that there should be a lot of targets on the table, even with the rookie quarterback under center. Rashee Rice, an acrobat artist, going to the Chiefs offense. Tell me if you've heard that before. Marvin Mims goes to the Broncos. You got Tank Dell staying in Houston, going to the Texans. Jalen Hyatt, an all-vertical threat to the Giants offense. Cedric Tillman, he was my wide receiver, I believe, 4 in this class, and he got taken in the 3rd round. Great value for the Browns. And then, guys, this list rounds out with a couple tight ends. Dalton Kincaid goes to the Bills. Sam Laporta ends up being drafted ahead of Michael Mayer to the Lions. And then you see a non-rookie on the list here, of course, in Bijan Robinson for the Saints because?
Well, listen, I mean, they traded Adam Trautman. They didn't draft a wide receiver this year. Right? I mean, until I think the 6th round. All right, so shout out to my friend Matthew Friedman who pointed this out. Bijan Robinson, who was a free agent, got retained by the Saints. They brought him back. They got rid of Trautman. They don't really have a lot of competition. We don't know what's going on with Michael Thomas. Think about Derek Carr to Darren Waller. Like, this is a quarterback that likes his tight end. Bijan Robinson sneakily had a really good draft weekend, and that's somebody that I think is a borderline top 10 tight end that won't cost you top 10 tight end prices. A couple of names on that others receiving votes just in terms of opportunity. Marvin Mims, the first wide receiver drafted by Sean Payton. Obviously, we've heard a lot of rumblings about Sutton and or Judy on the trade block. The other wide receivers, Hamler, Patrick, have been banged up quite a bit. You mentioned Cedric Tillman. Browns offense can be wide open.
Yep.
And after Amari Cooper, there's not, they've got Njoku, of course, but I think he's got a real chance to be the number 2 opposite of Amari Cooper for Deshaun Watson, what I think is going to be a pretty wide open offense. You mentioned Rashee Rice. Patrick Mahomes was banging the table for him, saying, go get me this guy. They worked out this summer. That's a pretty good endorsement. They got a lot of guys there. 2 people that I think have real opportunity, Tank Dell in Houston. Nico Collins, John Mechie.
It's not a lot there.
Noah Brown. Kringle McKringle. I think I made one of those guys' names up.
Yeah, good one.
But you don't even know who they all are. Anyway, Tank Dell's got a chance to be the number 1. Robert Woods, the ghost of Robert Woods, is there. He's got a chance to be the leading wide receiver of the Texans immediately. And finally, Dalton Kincaid. Just think about they were so desperate for slot help last year. The Bills. They brought Cole Beasley. They were like, Cole Beasley, get off your couch.
Yeah.
Pack your bags and come back to Buffalo. He should be a ton of so he's going to qualify as a tight end, but he's not going to be a tight end the way Dawson Knox is. He's going to be their slot receiver. He's got, I think you said on draft night, he had the best. You thought he had the best hands in the draft. And so Kincaid is just a really special player who's basically going to be the slot receiver for the Buffalo Bills, and he's going to qualify as a tight end. And, again, whether you think about Cole Beasley or the moments that Khalil Shakur had last year, it's going to be Diggs and Gabe Davis on the outside and Dalton Kincaid inside for the Bills, I think.
On the hate side of things, we start with that Seattle offense. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I know you projections right now, Barry. Metcalf is in that 12 to 15 range. Lockett is in 25 to 30. The big story here is that they took Jackson Smith and Jigba at the 20th overall selection. So now there's an actual real number 3 wide receiver in this offense.
Yeah, the fact they took JSN and they took Charbonnet, there's just too many guys now. There's too many guys, and also Pete Carroll loves to run the ball as well. So when you're talking about Metcalf and Lockett being on the hate list, there's just not a lot of ball to go around.
3 straight years for Metcalf and Lockett, each to have a target share north of 22%. And to me, the bigger concern here is Tyler Lockett. I think both Metcalf and Lockett make the hate list because both of their fantasy values took a step down because JSN, who we all liked as the number 1 receiver coming out of college this year, and he went number 1. He was the first wide receiver drafted. He's going to command a decent amount of targets. He plays in the slot, and the concern there is 42% of Tyler Lockett's targets over the last 2 seasons have come from the slot, which is where JSN is going to play. So I think it's a much bigger hit to Lockett than it is to Metcalf, who's still going to have his vertical role, his red zone role.
Listen, I'm with you completely. When you look at Seattle's offense last year, that period of time where Lockett was hurt, you just looked at the offense and you're like, they need another wide receiver. And now they're going to get that out of the gate where JSN is going to have the opportunity to eat into their targets right away while also being protected from injuries. Jay, you brought up there's just a lot of mouths to feed in this offense in the pass game.
And, I mean, it's great for Seattle overall because that's a good football problem and a terrible fantasy problem.
Yeah. All right, moving over to the quarterbacks here. And don't worry, Seattle, it's not all bad. We'll get there in a second. But we start with Lamar Jackson. New contract, Odell Beckham in the fold, Zay Flowers in the fold. And I'll say this, the most under-talked storyline for Baltimore with me is Todd Monken, the hiring of Todd Monken, who loves the explosive pass play. There's a lot of hope now with Lamar Jackson after all the drama has settled down.
Right, because, by the way, also Rashad Bateman, we expect him to be back healthy. All the reports are coming out of there. You guys know I'm obsessed with Isaiah Likely, their second-year tight end. They've got Mark Andrews as well. No question about it. Lamar Jackson had a great NFL draft weekend. We love Zay Flowers. You mentioned Monken and the play calling as well. He should be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I mean, again, a week ago, he was a very risky fantasy pick. And now he's a high floor, high upside fantasy pick.
Yeah, I think the thing that, I think people have forgotten that Rashad Bateman exists as well. He's a first-round pick 2 years ago, and we haven't seen him definitively fail yet. And, I mean, that team, the offense in the passing game outside of Andrews was built around guys like Devin Duvernay and Sammy Watkins and Demarcus Robinson. And now they just have just a wealth of options, a range of guys who may succeed, may fail, but at least they get to try guys out in Odell, in Zay Flowers, in Rashad Bateman to add to Andrews. Like, this team is now just completely loaded.
Cut to James Prochet. I couldn't get a mention.
Sorry,
the hell,
James.
Jay?
Sorry, James.
Sorry.
Forgot about you.
Poor James Prochet watching on his couch like, hey, I was one of those random guys for Baltimore too.
Yeah, I know he does watch the show, James.
Yeah.
James Prochet, noted fan of Peacock.
Yeah.
We brought up Quentin Johnston not too long ago, guys, and of course, that has a gigantic effect on Justin Herbert, where we want to see this offense get back to throwing the ball down the field a little bit more.
You mentioned it. Johnson is a deep threat. 19 yards per reception. That's what Johnson averaged in his college career per reception. 19 yards per reception. This is a team that was 27th in deep ball rate last season, as you mentioned. Even in a check down offense, Justin Herbert was second in pass attempts and third in passing yards per game last year. Now adds a more aggressive play caller in Kellen Moore, adds Quentin Johnston to spread the field. We'll see what's going on with Austin Eckler, but honestly, feels like either way, right? If Eckler comes back, great, because he's a great pass-catching option and he's a dynamic piece of the offense. But if he leaves, they're going to have to throw even more. So I think Justin Herbert is a winner, and he made the love list, at least others receiving votes. Justin Herbert makes the love list for quarterbacks.
Yep. And on Herbert, just quickly, 2 years ago, Justin Herbert, when you adjust for luck in terms of interceptions, just kind of the random chance and drops, Herbert was the best quarterback in the league in terms of efficiency. He was affecting the betting line more than anyone outside of Patrick Mahomes. So I think you almost have to throw last year out. It's not like he was bad last year, but he wasn't a top 2-3 guy. He wasn't an MVP candidate. And I think that's just because he was banged up and everyone around him was banged up. If he's healthy, if the receivers are healthy, Rashawn Slater's back, I mean, he can be the second best quarterback in the NFL behind Patrick Mahomes.
I think that's a great conversation just because, to your point, Mahomes wins the Super Bowl. Burrow and Allen are trying to get back. Lamar contract talk. Aaron Rodgers, is he going to get traded?
Yep.
Yes or no?
Sam Howell.
Kyler Murray, right? When you think about all the quarterback headlines from this offseason, just no one's been talking about Justin Herbert. Yep. He seems sort of forgotten. And that's insane because if you threw all the players back and had a draft again, Justin Herbert is like one of the first 4 players picked.
Yep.
You know, Jalen Hurts gets a record-setting contract, right? I mean, like, no one's talking about Justin Herbert, and yet I think if you talk to evaluators, they would say maybe only Mahomes goes ahead of him if you were drafting an NFL team today.
Yep, he's right there with Burrow and Allen, I think,
right,
in terms of talent. And if he's healthy, I think he can be as good as those guys. I mean, Mahomes is his own tier at this point, to
Correct.
be honest. But after that, Herbert's potentially
as good
as anyone.
Like, different people like different things, but like he is in that Allen, Burrow, Jalen Hurts, I think, range.
Agreed.
To close it out here, back to Seattle. We talked about how complicated the backfield has become. The wide receiver trio is now jarringly deep. What's not confusing, guys? Geno Smith under center and all of the weapons he has to play with.
Yeah, he makes the love list, I think, for a few reasons. Number one is, to your point, they add Zach Charbonnet, they add JSN. They still have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Ken Walker. They have a lot of weapons there. And the other piece here that I think is important is that Seattle was rumored to be in on the quarterback market. They had the 5th pick. There was talk about, hey, if Richardson's there, are they going to take him? What about Will Levis? They might take Levis as well. They really only have 1 year of guaranteed money for Geno Smith, so could they take a project like Richardson or Levis, let him sit for a year, and then a year from now, Geno's out? And they didn't. They didn't draft a quarterback. I mean, their draft said, we're going to give you more weapons, and we're also not drafting anyone else. Geno, you're our guy. We're building around you. So not only for this year, but dynasty stock as well. Geno Smith makes the love list.
Yeah, and the good thing with Geno is that, like, from a football perspective, second half of the season, he wasn't that good. Like, he started to turn the ball over a lot more, or at least throw it up for grabs a lot more, but he still got his numbers. And that's the good thing with Geno, is that I think the touchdowns will be there, the numbers will be there, and also the sneaky thing with him is that his rushing ability, I don't understand why he doesn't run more, because it's there. And last year he had 366 yards on the ground. He only had the one rushing touchdown. I think there's a little bit more meat on the bone there that he can add to his game.
A couple other quarterbacks receiving votes. Kenny Pickett, Steelers had one hell of a draft. Jordan Love, they went out and got multiple weapons for him. Ryan Tannehill on that expiring deal. Now Will Levis will sit behind him. And of course, Barry, your Sam Howell from your Commanders.
Again, same thing that we talked about with Geno Smith is just like some of these quarterbacks that were rumored to be, the fact is Commanders were supposedly in on Lamar Jackson. They were rumored to be taking Hendon Hooker in the first round. They didn't. Also, Will Levis was there for the taking. They didn't. They've continually said Sam Howell's our guy. Nothing that went through the draft changed that. Ryan Tannehill still here. Maybe a new nickname for him. No. Well, look, Ryan Tannehill, supposedly Ryan Tannehill was done last year. Supposedly Ryan Tannehill was done last year.
I like Tannehill.
And then I do. And by the way, now they have two projects in Malik Willis and Will Levis. And so I think, Tannehill just, Ryan Tannehill still here there as well. And to your point, Jordan Love, they gave him some, the job's all his and they gave him some targets.
Will or won't Will Levis play this year?
It's poor again. Spending too much time with Matthew Berry in his Dracula outfit.
Yeah.
All right.
Didn't answer the question, though.
Will Levis is not going to. It'll be Tanner still here.
Okay.
His show to run.
All right, we're going to get to rookie ranks in just 1 second. But a reminder, download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. All right, Barry, let's take a look at rookie ranks. A little dynasty action here. I think no surprise who sits at the top, Bijan Robinson. I think what happens after that is where things are going to get really, really interesting. Your top, take it away.
Well, so the point here is, as you see there in small gray letters, this is for one quarterback dynasty leagues. A lot of dynasty leagues are super flex, so obviously the rankings would change with super flex. We'll get to that in a second, but in a one quarterback league, you've got Bijan, then JSN, Jahmyr Gibbs, who we talked about. I have Anthony Richardson at 4. If you want to take Addison and Johnston over him, I could certainly argue that. My argument for Anthony Richardson at 4, even though it's a one quarterback league, it's hard to trade quarterbacks, and quarterbacks is that number one quarterback in fantasy is within the realm of possibility for Anthony Richardson. That's within the range of outcomes. Like he could be Cam Newton and Justin Fields, combined.
Josh Allen-ish.
He could be Josh Allen, exactly right. He could be a guy with that kind of upside with the offensive line, and with Pittman if they add another piece there. So there's definitely a chance that within 3 or 4 years we're talking about Anthony Richardson's number one quarterback in fantasy. And as much as we like Jordan Addison or Quentin Johnston, the fact is like, top 20 wide receiver is likely we're not talking about a Jamar Chase here. We're not talking about a Justin Jefferson here. We're not, we think they're nice players, but so there you go. And then you get into Zay Flowers. We mentioned Dalton Kincaid. It's Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud towards the end of my top 10. All of these ranks will be available on NBCSportsEdge.com, RotoWorld.com.
I think one of the really good things is we get to 11 through 20, resurgence at tight end that we've talked about. You saw Kincaid at number 8 there, but Jay, right here, Barry has Michael Mayer at 11. You see Sam Laporta sneaking in there. I mean, three tight ends in the top 20 is just good time for a position that's starving for help.
Yeah, and no offense to him, but the fact that we were talking about Juwan Johnson as a top 10 tight end, and Juwan Johnson, his over-unders for receiving yards were set at 32.5 or whatever. That was the state of the position. So influx of talent. I think some good landing spots as well for Kincaid, for Mayer. Laporta's a little bit crowded, but still it's going to be a really good offense. There's a lot of names here. Again, I don't really see the upside outside of the tight ends, and maybe Charbonnet as well. But obviously he's crowded by Ken Walker too. But of this top 20, I think the big takeaway is that there are only 2 guys who have the realistic ceiling to be, a potential best player in fantasy, and that's Bijan and Anthony Richardson. And Richardson, he might just not be good, and he might just never play, but he also, the athletic talent. people are talking about his ceiling as being, a mix of Josh Allen and Cam Newton, which is just crazy, but he's got those gifts. So he's a guy I think you want to take a flyer
with the rushing floor.
In Detroit, Gibbs could be special.
Yeah.
Gibbs could be special as well behind that offensive line. The one thing I will say here is that I think it's important, and Connor can speak to this as well, but when you're doing dynasty drafts, try to focus much more on talent than opportunity and role. Again, a year ago, people were like, I can't believe Ken Walker went to Seattle. He's got to play behind Rashad Penny. And can't believe Breece Hall's going to New York, and Garrett Wilson. They were both like, who's going to throw to Garrett Wilson? Who's Breece Hall? He's got their bad offensive line. He's going to be splitting time with Michael Carter. They're not going to win any games.
Yep.
Again, and obviously Hall had the tough injury, but the fact is last year at this time, everyone was talking up Drake London and Chris Olave. Olave hit, London didn't, but no one was talking about Garrett Wilson among the first-round rookie wide receivers. No one's talking about Jahan Dotson, who I think looks like a player, absolutely. He had really nice moments for the Commanders last year, and we'll see about Jamison Williams, right? But those are the first-round rookies from last year, and no one talked about Garrett Wilson. Of all of them, he was the guy that got the least amount of talk about, other than maybe Williams because he was injured, and he's the guy you'd want now. He's the guy you'd want right now. So, again, just because no one coming out of college questioned Garrett Wilson's talent. Everyone was just like, that guy's a baller. It's just he's going to the Jets and who's going to throw him the ball and blah, blah, blah. So, again, with Dynasty rookie ranks, I just always think bet on talent more than role and opportunity, just because that's going to come. Talent wins out. They'll find their way to the field.
So let's take a look at the top 10 for Superflex, which obviously much different landscape, Barry, because of the value at the quarterback position. And I think that much is obvious as you look at 3 in your top 4.
Yeah, obviously Bijan's still number 1, but Richardson, then Bryce Young, then C.J. Stroud. Again, I think Richardson has the higher ceiling at fantasy than Young or Stroud just because of the rushing. Then you get into JSN, you get into Gibbs at 6. Then we've talked about Addison and Johnson. Zay Flowers comes in at 9. And then Dalton Kincaid at 10, although if you're in a tight end premium league where you get 1.5 points per reception for tight ends, Kincaid would move up for me. He'd move up to number 7 for me, just below Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep, Connor, one for you. Who's going to have a better fantasy season, Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud?
Ooh, I would take Bryce. I mean, number one, the situations aren't entirely different. I do like Carolina's infrastructure better than where Houston is at offensively. I think Carolina has a deeper offensive line. I know Houston has the premium talent in Laramie Tunsil, but I think Carolina has the deeper offensive line. I think at least a veteran presence in Thielen, where you look at Houston as we did earlier, and you're scrambling.
Right.
And I believe in Frank Reich. That's a big difference too. Where I like DeMeco Ryans, but DeMeco Ryans is an offensive coach. I don't know how that staff's going to shake out early on. So yeah, I would go with Bryce, and I think there is limited upside for both right away.
I mean, so by the way, you've got a really strong run. Houston has a strong run game too with Pierce, but in Carolina you have Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, both of whom are viable pass catchers. So again, Bryce Young gets in trouble, he can dump off to either one of those guys. Both those guys are good pass catchers. And you mentioned they have DJ Shark, they have Adam Thielen. By the way, we also like Jonathan Mingo.
And they took him early.
So, I mean, that's another guy that we hadn't really got into during this show. But we do think Mingo has a chance to carve out a significant fantasy role for himself over the second half of the year.
Jay, no way to close out this show without taking an early peek at the Offensive Rookie of the Year odds as we have them up here. What value jumps out to you? Because obviously Bijan at plus 300. I think it opened at plus 400, so we've already seen movement there. But is there any value on this board right now?
I mean, I think if I was looking at longer shots, the two guys that I would look at would be Jordan Addison at plus 1,700 and then Quentin Johnston at plus 2,000, just because they have a chance to be a top 2 wide receiver on a potentially elite passing offense. So those would be the two longer shots. But I think that this conversation starts with, how does Bijan lose? Like, how does he lose? We're talking about
injury.
Him as a potential top 5 fantasy pick. Like, that's insane for a rookie running back. So I think, you don't want to tie up that much money for that long on plus 300, but I think that's maybe a bit of value. The other thing with this market to remember, and what I always think about, is that Justin Herbert beat Justin Jefferson for this award, despite Jefferson relative to position just being better than Herbert was. But tiebreak always goes to the quarterback if it's close, just because the quarterback means more. So Bryce Young at plus 475 I think is kind of interesting as well. And I'd have him over Stroud because of Frank Reich.
I was going to say, what about Anthony Richardson at plus 900?
Well,
here's my argument. Because again, they say, you know what, we're gonna do Lamar Jackson rookie year with you. Like you're gonna run the ball 20 times. that kind of thing. Between him and Jonathan Taylor, we're going to, the passes won't be a lot, right? It'll be quick bubble screens to Michael Pittman. We'll as you develop. But here's the Colts have pretty decent defense. They have other skilled players around them. The offensive line gels. You could see Richardson have a Lamar Jackson-like rookie year where they sort of grind out wins in a division that doesn't scare you. I know Jacksonville's on the rise and we expect Tennessee to be there, but it's not like a division where you're like, there's no way the Colts win this division. So Anthony Richardson starts the whole game, the whole year, and they win that division with 10 or 11 wins because he just sort of grinds it out.
Yep. No, absolutely. And the thing to remember is that this time last year, or heading into last season, the Colts were minus 130 to win the AFC South. And we forget about that because they had such a bad year. But most of that supporting cast is still there. And I think the defense is still good. You've still got Pittman, you've still got Taylor, you've still got Quentin Nelson on the offensive line. So I like that. The one thing I would do there is I would wait until we get closer to camp and just make sure that Gardner Minshew isn't the starting quarterback.
Exactly.
Because if Richardson, it's going to be such an amazing sign for Richardson and also for his offensive rookie of the year chances. If he's able to win that starting job from Gardner Minshew, that will tell us something about his readiness. Because the easy thing is just to start Minshew.
I agree, but if he gets that job, do the odds from plus 900 suddenly then come down?
You got to run to the BetMGM app quickly.
There you go, and use promo code Barry.
Yeah.
There
That's
you
a
have
wrap
it.
here, fellas.
By the way, I've been told that our show from Churchill Downs is 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, not 5 o'clock Eastern.
You did lie to me.
I lied to you,
Yes.
and Stephen
Did you
D'Agostino
want me to
lied
not
to
show
me.
up?
What?
Did you want me to not show up to the show? I would have showed up at 5 and you'd been like, oh, Connor, you missed the show.
Pretty much.
I mean,
Tough
most of
scene.
them
Me
the
and Jay
horses.
Croucher,
Yeah.
just
On the
doing
kangaroos.
galloping and chugging mint juleps. I intend to be drunk on air. Just so you know.
The way to go.
That's a wrap for us. We will be on, reminder, Thursday live from Churchill Downs.
Live. They can't.
4 Eastern, not 5 o'clock.
4 p.m. Eastern. It's closing time, which means you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.